All right, let's continue to move along as we do every day at this time right here on the Ed Dean Radio Show. But let's continue to expose more of Ritch Workman, state representative, a Republican, who is nothing more than a protege of that of Charlie Crist, who supported all the Charlie Crist bills out there. By the way, it was really funny watching Ritch Workman back in 2014 criticize Charlie Crist because, well, he left the party. But yet the same criticism, I was asking, well, wait a second, Ritch Workman, you criticized Charlie Crist, but yet you voted for all the measures that Charlie supported until Rick Scott got in office in 2010. Let me read to you an article that I wrote in SunshineStateNews.com about Ritch Workman killing an anti-terrorism bill out there. Because remember, Ritch Workman talks about being a conservative, but yet, he plays party politics. Mike Hill, state representative, who was on this radio show a few weeks back, said that his bill, Andy's Law, and this was done after the Pulse nightclub shooting in about a month ago in June, Andy's Law, where any victim of a terrorist attack in Florida would be able to bring civil penalties against the person or persons who perpetuated the terrorist act. Also underneath Andy's Law, it increased penalties against those that would use terrorist attacks here in the state of Florida. Now, I sat here and took Representative Mike Hill to task because he says his bill probably would have prevented the shooting. I say it would not have prevented the shooting. He said the reason for this bill was because the federal government was not doing anything to address the situation when it comes to helping out those that are victims of families in terrorist activities. So Mike Hill says that this vote came and passed all the committees. It passed the Senate floor with all the Democrats overwhelmingly supporting it. And he sat back and says, my bill did not even get a vote on the House floor because he wanted to talk about Steve Crisafulli, but he told me in an interview and also on this radio show that the main culprit was State Representative Ritch Workman, who is the House Rules Committee chairman, which means he can decide for the most part what bills get heard and what bills don't get heard. Again, Andy's Law, whether you agree with it, whether it would have stopped the Pulse nightclub shooting, I don't know if it would have, but again, the bill would have benefited victims and the families of the victims that were hurt in a terrorist attack. It would have increased penalties against those that perpetuated terrorist attack. And Ritch Workman says, Mike Hill didn't work his bill. Mike Hill says, man, I talked to Ritch twice. I sent him letters. And Ritch Workman, according to Mike Hill, says, Workman killed my bill based on politics because I would not support the Enterprise Florida bill supported by that of some of the Republican establishment and by Governor Rick Scott. And Mike Hill in the article, if you go to SunshineStateNews.com, says, quote, the bottom line is my bill would have benefited those who were victims of terrorism, which boosted criminal penalties for terrorism and those who support terrorism, but Ritch Workman decided to play politics and hurt those people whose lives are on the line. And he said, and he told me in the interview, Ritch Workman killed my bill because I would not support the Republican Party establishment, better known as the Republican Party leadership, better known as Ritch Workman. And that's what happened. And because of party politics, Andy's Law is not a bill that exists today. It's not into law because Ritch Workman killed a counterterrorism bill, killed an anti-terrorism bill, and played party politics. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you this right now. If Ritch Workman was such a conservative, where was that conservatism underneath Charlie Crist? Tell me all the bills that you fought against when Charlie Crist was governor out there. And when you go out there and say, well, Andy's Law was a fantasy bill, nothing was going to happen, it was based on party politics, then what about all the stuff that you talk about? Well, we're going to eliminate sanctuary cities in Florida. Really? That was a fantasy bill because it never made it out of the Senate committee. Oh, we're going to do something about immigration, and I'm going to do something with immigration, Arizona immigration style bill, and yet, and I'm going to play the clip here in a moment. You voted to give in-state tuition for illegal aliens, Ritch Workman. Now that's something. And by the way, I don't give a flip if Rick Scott supported it. He's wrong as well. I mean, this is something I could expect from the Democrats. This isn't something I should expect from the Republicans out there. Let's play the clip. This is from, where is this? Where's this clip, guys? This is from Stop Career Politicians. What's the name of the website? StopCareerPoliticiansNow.com. This is the ad that's been going out talking about the real voting history of Ritch Workman.
Ritch Workman voted to let illegal immigrants attend Florida's colleges at discounted in-state tuition rates.
I absolutely voted yes on that bill.
Workman voted to let illegal immigrants receive a license to practice law.
I absolutely voted yes on that bill.
And what does Workman say about voting against our values?
My job is not to ask your opinion and go do your bidding.
Ritch Workman is the wrong man for Brevard.
My job is not to ask your opinion and go do your bidding.
Let me tell you something. The obnoxiousness of Ritch Workman has caught up. The arrogance of Ritch Workman has caught up. And it's going to catch up in the election cycle because I promise to expose it. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. When Ritch Workman was going through a divorce and people were criticizing him, not me, but people were criticizing him because he wanted to repeal a cohabitation bill. And people are like, well, is Ritch living with it? I'm like, dude, who cares? It's not even an issue. I stuck up for Ritch Workman. When Ritch Workman was going to get shafted by Michael Herodopoulos because Herodopoulos held a fundraiser for Workman last year and then decided, and he was out spreading rumors against Ritch, I did an article that said, hey, Ritch is no lightweight here. I said on my radio show, hey, Ritch has been running for this seat for some time here. I think Mike is not in the right area to be pushing Ritch Workman aside. I stood up for Ritch Workman. And yet, Ritch Workman wants to treat people in the media like they're second class. He wants to treat conservatives. He doesn't show up to all these meetings. Treat them like they're second class. He'll sit here, and rightfully so, by the way, itch to complain about an advanced placement program textbook that talks more about the Muslim faith than it does about Christianity and Judaism. But yet, he doesn't get as much as outrage about Common Core, which he claims he voted against, but which Political Fact says, no, he's wrong. It's mostly false. And the anti-Common Core crowd has pointed out that Ritch Workman is not telling the truth. You know what? You can expect Democrats to pull this stunt. But let me ask you a question. Is it not safer, but is it more realistic to vote for a liberal Democrat than one of these rhino Republicans? Because at least with the Democrat, you know what you're going to get. With Ritch Workman, he runs as a conservative, but he votes as a moderate with the largest tax increase in Florida history there. Flipped on high-speed rail, flip-flopped on red light cameras, killed an anti-terrorism bill. Was talking about doing something with the Arizona immigration style bill, and then he decides to vote for in-state tuition for illegal aliens. But when Rick Scott gets elected, hey, he changes his views on all this stuff. Over the next several weeks, we will make it a point to expose Ritch Workman on this radio show. It's caught up with you, brother. You hear that? It's called another nail in the coffin. Coming up next, Willie Lawson, Frankie Monteleone, the Black Lives Matter. Who's supporting these guys? How are these people making a buck? We'll have these debates all coming your way. The email address is ed@eddean.com as we continue to move along. More on the other side in just a few moments.